Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and we got a double album bomb week from Travis Scott and Post Malone, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. Yep, double album bomb week. Y'all know the drill with these at this point. We've had quite a few of them. And technically this one, only one of them really counts as a full album bomb, which means I'm going to be covering every single entry, despite having already reviewed the album at length. And that means this episode's going to be long as hell, and you're just going to all have to be ready for it. Although, let's be real, this is probably one of the biggest event weeks in terms of releases in 2023. I'm not sure how you could really escape what happened on the charts here. Although, if you look at our top 10, you could make a compelling case, because right back at number 1 again is Last Night by Morgan Wallen. Let's be clear, this song is now on the downswing, especially on radio. It no longer rules streaming. It probably is more vulnerable than it's ever been, and that finally opens up the door for Fast Car by Luke Combs to make its run at number 2. The sales, they're there. It's building a radio margin. It just needs a little bit more to properly get over the hump. I mean, discount at the right time, Luke Combs will probably get that number 1. Now, you might be wondering where a certain Jason Aldean song is. I'm going to mention it briefly here because I have a very different plan for covering nearly half the Hot 100 that lost this week, and that's because its streaming pretty much evaporated, and while it's slowly getting radio, it's by no means fast enough. So that song saw the biggest drop from number 1 that did not debut there in Hot 100 history. Fun stuff! But circling around to our big debuts, we got our next at number 3, Meltdown by Travis Scott featuring Drake. Pretty much just here on streaming. That's the story of this entire Travis Scott album bomb. Then we saw Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift continuing to make its play up to number 4. Make no mistake, between the radio and streaming, this is probably the strongest competition coming up that Luke Combs will probably have to deal with. I would not be surprised if both of them eventually maybe wind up getting number 1. But then we got another Travis Scott song, Fiend, featuring Playboy Cardi at number 5. Again, it's all streaming, no radio is touching this. They prefer songs like Calm Down by Rema and Selena Gomez, holding at number 6 thanks to a surprisingly strong radio week, which actually held up over Fuck You Mean by Gunna down at number 7 because basically it's predominantly running on streams. You can tell that Travis Scott just overran him here. Then we got Barbie World by Ice Spice, Nicki Minaj, and Aqua holding at number 8. I'm probably going to chalk this one up to the Barbie soundtrack having more staying power on streaming, but this is actually also getting radio. Then we have Vampire by Olivia Rodrigo at number 9, which the radio just loves, but also took another hit on streaming, and Dance the Night by Dua Lipa at number 10. I mean, see all the Barbie soundtrack commentary as it also has the radio, which I'll admit is a little less surprising because otherwise this is a very obvious stock Dua Lipa song that's set to do well on mainstream pop radio. Now we get to the messy part though. The losers and the dropouts, because even in the latter category there is a lot here, especially with the bigger names. Let's deal with the songs that actually have their year-end list spots locked up first. Sure Thing by Miguel, Something in the Orange by Zach Bryan, Die For You by The Weeknd, I'm Good Blue by David Guetta and BB Rexa, and Dancing in the Country by Tyler Hubbard. Might as well add Por Las Noches by Peso Pluma, which probably got really close here. But then we got a swath of songs that fell well short, like Bye by Peso Pluma, also saw the departure of El Azul with Junior H, then See You Again by Tyler the Creator and Kali Uchis, Fight the Feeling by Rod Wave, and Ain't That Some by Morgan Wallen. Now for the losers, oh, come on, guys. It's nearly half the Hot 100. It doesn't make sense for me to just list off names. Let's go to the songs that actually did not drop 10 spots or more, which is actually a somewhat more reasonable and interesting conversation. Now, most of these you could probably chalk up to radio support, even if it's somewhat diminished, like with Flowers by Miley Cyrus at number 12, All My Life with Lil Durk and J. Cole at 13, Snooze by SZA at 15, Karma and Antihero by Taylor Swift at 20 and 31 respectively, Need a Favor by Jelly Roll at 24, and Religiously by Bailey Zimmerman at 33. Then we got the increased stability thanks to, again, Barbie, which we can point at for What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish at 22, although I'd put money on this being a legit hit, especially after seeing her perform it live. Then Speed Drive by Charlie XCX at 78, and I'm Just Ken by Ryan Gosling at 92. But then there are the weirder ones. You, Me, and Whiskey by Justin Moore and Priscilla Block at 47, picking up gains because it had a shockingly good radio week. Might as well chalk up something similar, unfortunately, for Baby Don't Hurt Me by David Guetta, Anne-Marie, and Coi Leray at 64, or even What It Is Block Boy by Doechii and Kodak Black at 66, which has more radio than streaming traction at this point. But finally, sticking to the very bottom, we've got Johnny Dang by That Mexican OT, Paul Wall, and Drody at 100. I'm just kind of happy it's here. That makes me smile. But now for the gains and returns, it's pretty much just Post Malone here. Overdrive came back to 68, and we saw pickups for Chemical at 35 and Morning at 40. But again, he didn't quite get enough to get into album bomb territory proper, whereas Travis Scott absolutely did. And since I already reviewed that album, and he's well past my threshold for an upper tier album bomb with 18 new tracks, I'm gonna be sticking for the best or the worst, and those in the top 20, and that still gives me plenty there. Outside of those, Parasail with Dave Chappelle and Young Lean at 53 very nearly made the worst. Young Lean just saved it. Love with Kid Cudi at 49. Lost Forever with Westside Gunn at 46. Till Further Notice with James Blake and 21 Savage at 38. Circus Maximus with The Weeknd and Sway Lee at 36. Schizo with Young Thug at 34. God's Country at 28. Sirens at 27. Telekinesis with SZA and Future at 26. Del Resto Echoes with Beyonce at 25, and Modern Jam with Tizo Touchdown doing whatever he thought he was doing at 23. And that still gives us a stacked list of new arrivals, so alright, let's not waste any time. Let's start off with number 90, Novacandy by Post Malone.
Look on my face, nothing lasts forever, so I look at my wrist, dopamine overdose.
Alright, let's put aside the actually really good transition between this song and Morning on the album. I've had mixed feelings on this since the jump. On the one hand, the hook actually does scan pretty well, and while the vocals feel more compressed than they should, the whole pulsating percussion and the heavier swells of guitars and melody, they actually build up really well into the piano that backs up the chorus. But the mood of this track is weird, where you think there was actually some self-awareness about his various bursts of luck and success. I mean, it seems like there's a bit of a Bob Dylan callback on the first verse, or by the second verse, the problems that seem like they would throw him up, or how a dopamine overdose would leave him just burned out and numb, but the song never quite gets to that point. It's a high that implies a come down, but it never really happens. I mean, it's not bad, but gotta be honest, not a favorite of mine. I just don't have a good feel for the stakes. Number 89, Aqui Te Espero by Ivan Cornejo.
Loco por pensar que regresas, me tienes dando vueltas por tu amor, por tu amor.
Last time I talked about Ivan Cornejo was back in 2021, and I tried to go easy on him. It had the feel of a song that was not intended for a wider audience with amateurish production. It all felt very mismanaged. I frankly wasn't expecting to hear anything from this guy again. Turns out he's now backed by Interscope, and we've got a new single that's riding virality again, and yep, we are doing this again, where all the acoustic pickups feel way too clean and tinny, but are now matched by a bunch of misty cycling guitars further back in the mix that don't quite have the atmosphere to overcome Cornejo's drippy, slapdash delivery. The production isn't quite as distractingly bad, but the composition feels very sloppy, and the vocal mixing, especially in the post-chorus, just sounds awful. Unfortunately, the lyrics have also taken a turn for the worse here too. It's post-breakup where the relationship seems like it's guttered out, and we get a lot of whiplash between some very sincere grief and lashing out, and potentially framing this partner as more emotionally abusive. And you know what, that could be interesting if there was any intensity to this delivery, but it all feels so sullen and miserable. It's hard to get a clear picture of what's actually the root here. Again, I kind of feel bad for this kid because this sort of messy emotionality could actually work with more intimacy or more homespun production, but this, once again, it doesn't come together at all. Can't recommend it. Number 88, Don't Understand by Post Malone.
So much 'cause I don't like myself. I don't understand why you like me so much. Wish I was someone else.
I don't know, I think I'd like this song better if it was somewhere else on the album, not the opening track. I mean, it's pleasant as a slow burn opener where he's so stuck in the self-loathing that he doesn't get why his partner loves him, and you know what, okay, there's some tangible sentiment there, and the bare bones arrangement can actually make that work. But this is also one of a few examples where you wish there was just a little more detail in the writing around the spare haunted verses to build up into that hook. Just flesh out the scene a little more to match with that violin that comes in on the second verse and the chorus. I don't know, it's fine, but again, between the poor album placement and the underweight writing, it doesn't do a lot for me. I was kind of expecting more. Number 87, Too Cool to Die by Post Malone.
I'm just passing by. The world keeps getting harder, baby, but I'm too cool to die.
Hey look, it's the most obvious attempt to recreate Circles that we've gotten from Post Malone in some time. From the soft-focused driving groove, the reverb guitars, and the staggering hazy vibes. And you know what, that's fine. Circles was good, I guess. But this was also a song where Post Malone is blearily trying to flex a bit alongside this girl who seems like she's taking him for a ride. Probably a little bit too fast and a little bit too much for him, but he's not gonna push back that hard because he's just so damn cool. I mean, there are flickers of deeper anxiety, Post Malone's fear of flying, which given his past issues with planes, I absolutely get, and then some of the passing references to climate change on the hook, but it's also lightweight with none of the darkness or the weight of the moment that really clicks for me. Again, it's certainly listenable, but from the album, it's absolutely not one of my favorites. Number 80, On the Radar Freestyle by Drake and Central C.
He's over like three faces cause the feds can't see those eyes. People I shouldn't be beside. When I was an actor, they would go Stratford just to sell food on Bieber's side.
So I'm not really surprised that Drake is collaborating with Central C, a UK rapper who I don't think I've ever really liked, but based off of catching glimpses of him live just last weekend, he's got a bigger audience than you might expect. Now this is a freestyle from a New York radio station that's been packaged as a song, basically two extended verses over a watery UK drill beat with a goopy sample flip melody that I honestly really don't like, and it runs for nearly 5 minutes. And okay, while the flows are pretty good, even with Drake occasionally affecting a bit of an accent, which normally throws me off, I can't say this builds up to much, even with the excuse that, again, this is just a freestyle. Now, I prefer Drake's verse because there's a bit more flair, and the wordplay is a little bit sharper, but then he compares himself to Jesus and Julius Caesar and says that he wants to be under a girl's breasts like peas and rice, and if he comes inside a girl, it's breeding time. I swear to God, for the past couple of years, Drake's lines about women have taken a fucking nosedive. Now, Central C also has a cum line in his verse, specifically wanting to see her take the pill before he leaves her, but my issue with him is that it's just pretty consistent in that his flexing and stacking money, it's not interesting. Drake's at least a little bit more unique with some of his details, but still, a freestyle like this is a chart throwaway. It's only here because of the names, and we all know that. I don't think this is special. You can take or leave it. Number 67, Something Real by Post Malone.
No reservation, pull a 20D. Give me something real. I would trade it all just to be at peace.
Now, here's a Post Malone song I actually really like, mostly because he plays on his bombastic side with the full choral background, the huge swampy mix, and the acoustics echoing out over the bassy synth and the smoldering guitars. And as much as Post Malone is gonna try to revel in all his hedonism and brand names and playing the pussy like it's Fur-Lee's, he also seems to get how empty, almost pathetic it can all feel, as none of this is gonna last. All of this is just a desperate attempt to cover up his existential emptiness, and the fact that it's not working creates that nightmare where he'll have to stand in line at the gates of hell just like everyone else. I mean, it's this bleak as hell song, but it's got some of that biblical force and swell that sounds really impressive. It actually sells the drama of the moment. So yeah, I actually think this is a great track. But let's compare it to a slightly different mood. Number 56, Enough Is Enough by Post Malone.
I know it's easier to leave me down here on the ground, 'cause enough is enough.
My colleague John from ARTV compared this to a One Direction song when he and I reviewed the album together on my channel. And yeah, melodically, I absolutely hear it with that Max Martin co-write, especially in how that main guitar melody explodes onto the hook. But if that's the case, it would be one of their better ones, and Post Malone once again ramps up to 11 on that hook with the heavier percussion and his multi-track belting, even a falsetto that's arguably as full and as tolerable as he's ever been. Now, I do think the percussion sounds a little bit more blown out than I would prefer, but for a song that's all about Post Malone's staggering love-hate relationship with alcohol, this kinda hits the sweet spot of being, this is a serious goddamn problem that's absolutely gonna ruin my life and all my relationships, but hey, there can still be euphoria. Hell, if Sam Levinson is looking for a montage mode for the next season of Euphoria, side note, do not make season 3 of Euphoria, that ship has long sailed in so many ways. I mean, a song like this would kind of fit, it would nail the vibe. So yeah, another great song, another one of my favorites from the album. I'm kind of curious if it's gonna get traction. Number 55, Jealousy by Offset and Cardi B.
To the DA and judge, never been a dog, never been a scrub. 4-5 Glock 9, all you want to judge. Better than who must be high on them drugs. Cooling in the mansion with the bubbles in the tub. Heard you wanna cover, you a bitch, you with a stud.
So there is a part of me that respects the hustle and Offset and Cardi B playing off the more contentious rumors around their relationship for charting success. That part's lessened by the fact that we still don't have that Cardi B album and the rollout's looking weirder all the time. Now, okay, let's be real. I expect this is probably going to wind up on whatever the hell Offset winds up pushing. He's got the first and the longer verse against the 3-6 Mafia sample, the thicker track knock with the staccato piano embellishments, and honestly, it's a pretty strong verse with a couple good switch-ups. It's nothing super innovative, but you can tell that he's angry at folks who are pocket-watching him and his relationship, and that lets him unload his threats. But again, Cardi B kind of steals the show again for me. She's funnier, she's always been pretty good at selling anger, and her contempt at those who are trying to spread rumors and crap online about her is palpable, especially when Cardi B has proven plenty capable of punching back and getting that final word. More importantly, it actually flips the reality that Cardi B seems to have a working understanding of whatever relationship she has with Offset, and if it's a little bit non-traditional, I don't see how that's anyone's business. Now, as for the song, okay, it's not great, but as a couple single, there's a decent amount of like. I'll take it. Number 43, In Your Love by Tyler Childers.
We were just meant to go long enough to find what we were chasing after. I believe I found it here in your love.
To think that this might have debuted even higher if we didn't have the Travis Scott album bomb this week, that's wild to me. Now, for those of you who don't know, Tyler Childers is an indie country act that's been absolutely blowing up the past year or two. I reviewed him way back in 2019. Even then, I thought I was late to the party because I probably should have covered his excellent 2017 album Purgatory. But now, he's smashed into the Hot 100 thanks to a huge streaming debut and his music video deliberately focusing on a male-gay relationship, which unfortunately earned the outrage circuit from all the folks who got behind Try That in a Small Town because of course it fucking did. I mean, I already have an extension on my browser that lets me see the YouTube dislike bars. I know where it's coming from. I'm not getting fooled here. But I'm making that parallel intentionally, but not implying cynicism on Childers' part, because he actually comes from small town Kentucky, where this sort of ragged romance can play out. It deserves to have a voice actually selling it. And Childers adds a lot of quivering presence and weight to an otherwise pretty straightforward love song. Now, if there was something that kind of threw me for a bit here, it might come in the production. The piano line, the subtle touches, it reminds me a lot of mid-90s neo-traditional ballads, but then we get those glossy synths playing around some of the heavier guitars. It's not a bad tonal choice, just an odd one. I guess I'm not as blown out of the water by this as I want to be because I've been listening to queer country for a while now. It's not exactly boundary pushing, but it's a really damn good song, and if this is what Tyler Childers needs to cross over, I'm looking forward to more. This is great. Check it out. Number 19, My Eyes by Travis Scott.
10,000 on my eyes, roly-poly on my wrist. Gotta make a flight, big day, slumming on FaceTime, 50
AK when I'm storming off, no race.
So we've got 7 Travis Scott songs to get through to end this off, and quite frankly, with Travis Scott's recent behavior and bringing out Kanye West on the first Utopia spot on the tour, and I feel obliged to remind folks that Kanye West spent the second half of last year spewing fascist nonsense and platforming that bullshit for a soft reintroduction into the mainstream, it deserves an appropriate response. And given that I already reviewed Utopia, I'm going to try to keep these pretty brief. I'm also not going to pull any punches. So this has got a bunch of goopy synths and Justin Vernon doing a bad James Blake impression, Travis Scott doing a lot of the pitch shifting flexing that gets grating shockingly quickly, especially the reference of sweeping up cases, before a beat switch into something that's a little bit sharper, where he then actually directly references the crowd crush situation in 2021, saying that he wishes that he could have saved them, which is given that it's been revealed that he and his team kept the show deliberately going when they knew it feels disingenuous as hell, amidst a bunch of other bars where he talks about trying to stay inspired and then making a cast of his dick so his girl will never need to cheat. The song needed more than a few lines of Sampha to be salvageable. Next, number 17, Topia Twins by Travis Scott featuring Rob 49 and 21 Savage.
Tell me what you doing for, bet I think another nigga do it for before you blink.
My god, was the bass mixing and compression always mastered this rough? Anyway, this is one of Travis Scott's few good hooks on this album against the organ and some of the haunted guitars for a song that's all about fucking twins and brand name porn. And once again, Travis Scott is the least interesting part of this, where Rob 49 is both funnier and brings a little more intensity, and 21 Savage's verse is probably the sharpest in some of the gunplay if he wasn't calling all the girls in the studio props. I mean, I would put this among one of the higher quality songs of the album, at least I did in the review. Not sure I'm gonna stick with that. Number 16, Thank God by Travis Scott.
For times, for life, for down my eyes. Thank God I'm free tonight.
And while we're in this territory, part of the running narrative around Utopia that's only gotten louder is that it's assembled from a bunch of leftovers from older sessions, specifically older Kanye sessions. And so we've got one Kanye co-produced that was apparently a leftover from the Donda sessions with Casey that was originally going to be on the track list back in 2020 and then was dropped from that list. And Travis Scott didn't credit Casey and got cussed out for it on social media. And thus, while the hollow clinking around the bassy synth actually sounded pretty cool, especially with the change up into that final verse, this is ultimately a song about Travis Scott's direct line with God and how he'll never be dissuaded in his course, and he's angry with the Grammys that Astroworld lost to Cardi B's Invasion of Privacy. Hey, what do you know, the Grammys got it right for once. Number 14, Hyena by Travis Scott.
What we know, where you shall go.
No, I've got no clue why Travis chose to spell the song title like that. But hey, this was at least trying to do something kind of interesting with the blown out percussion grinding around the warped, jangling acoustics, and then bookending the song with samples from Gentle Giant and Funkadelic. The problem is that Travis Scott does nothing with that. Instead, it's the same sort of wild but increasingly stock hedonism that's only made odd by out-of-nowhere references to Esperanza Spalding and the old Kelsey Grammer-produced show Girlfriends from the early 2000s. And I mean, that doesn't really work when you imply so much more with samples that seem to be demanding this sort of world-changing experience that Utopia does not remotely deliver. I mean, this one's not so much bad as it's awkward and kind of strange and doesn't work. Next. Number 11, I Know by Travis Scott.
It's 5 a.m. and I'm drunk right now. Tell me, can we still fuck? 101, I'm in the zone right now. Tell me, am I still? Telling you just how I feel right now. You say it's just the drugs, and I know.
Of all the Travis Scott songs that charted highly, this is one I'm not sure I really understand why it charted so high, outside of the auto-tune crooning reminding me way too much of Kanye. Probably one of the most radio-friendly hooks on the album. Okay, I get it. I mean, with some of the delicate piano behind the sharper trap percussion and every vocal sample elongating and stuttering. And yet, this is a track where Travis Scott drunkenly calls a girl in an obscene hour in the morning and then tries to fuck, with more than a little exasperation at being called out for his hedonism, given that that he's tried this shit before. So necessarily, he then tries to guilt trip this girl by saying that he's got 20 bitches sucking like bisons, and he just picked her out of a roster, so what does she matter? But he's totally convinced this is gonna blow her mind. Yeah, when The Weeknd made The Hills, his frustrated early morning messiness was way more credible, and likable, and better produced. Number 5, Fiend by Travis Scott featuring Playboi Carti. Let's deal with the elephant in the room right now. Playboi Carti sounds like shit on this. Where if it's intentional, somebody probably should have told them to stop, and if it's not, it's an object lesson in not recording when your throat's on fire. Apparently Sheck West was supposed to be on this too, but he got pulled at the last minute digitally. He's only on the physicals. I have no idea if he could have made this better, where Travis attempts to use an off-key dying synthesizer with a bunch of fluttery cascades from 2007 with some really shoddy mastering. But what's truly infuriating is that this is not that new. It's not boundary pushing, not doing anything special. It's just Travis Scott trying to play and cater to the rage audience in the most stock way possible, with a lot of half-form flexing and nothing remotely interesting coalescing. In other words, I think this is fucking terrible, even for rage music. The only time I've seen this work is on bass-boosted festival speakers, and even by that metric, this sucks. Move on. And finally, number 3, Meltdown by Travis Scott featuring Drake.
Regular bitch, famous hoes lame, but they stay on my dick. Heard your new joint is embarrassing shit. You talk to the cops on some therapist shit. You act like you love this American shit, but really the truth is you're scared of the six.
So okay, this one's Drake's fault. He wanted to replicate the impact of Sicko Mode clearly, and then take a bunch of pot shots at Pusha T and hit Pharrell as well, because that's smart. Take shots at one of the most well-liked and respected producers in the game, and a rapper to whom you lost last time. And thus he sent this verse in to Mike Dean 4 hours before the album went live. That also apparently fucked with the physical releases again. And for what? For Drake to go into this whispery delivery to convey a lot of menace and open up with a reference to tea time, because, you know, he's spilling the tea, but also not? I mean, there's nothing leaked here that feels special, outside of arguing that apparently nobody's wearing Louis Vuitton since Pharrell took over, and that he would have been there with gang members at Paris Fashion Week if Vogue wasn't suing him. I mean, this is what Drake is thinking is impressive out of this beef? Come on. Now, to be fair, I actually like the ominous production. The first beat switch is kind of good, although it's swear some of the laser sounds on Travis's verse there sounds like they're coming from TIE fighters. Until we get the final segment, which feels like your stock trap beat, and it's not, again, like Travis Scott is saying anything interesting. Once again, yeah, there's threats and debauchery, but it's also goddamn basic. It's not special. At least Sicko Mode, a song I still don't even really like. To this day, I get its appeal, but it felt like an event. This feels like it's trying to manufacture all the hype that came naturally, and all it has me left wanting is Pusha T to release the song he played walking the Louis Vuitton runway back in June. It was sure as hell better than all this. Anyways, that's our week. Best and worst. Let's do the latter first. It's Fiend by Travis Scott featuring Playboi Carti. Dishonourable mentions regrettably going to Aqui te Espero by Ivan Cornejo. Again, I think he's just being mismanaged. It's hard for me to blame him directly. It's Interscope's fault. Best is trickier. I think I'm going with Enough is Enough by Post Malone as the best, but it is a narrow win over a tie for honorable mention. Something Real by Post Malone and In Your Love by Tyler Childers. But next week, oh my god, the fallout from this is going to be a mess. Stay tuned for that, I guess. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.